I'm Amory, and I am here with the AMERIE'S book club selection for the month of August, which is The Many Daughters of Afong Moy by Jamie Ford. Afong Moy was a real person. Known as the Chinese lady, she was the first Chinese person to arrive in the United States in the 1830s. This book is not a historical counting, but it takes her real life, her existence, as a starting point. In this novel, we follow many of Afong Moy's descendants, women who are struggling in their own way with what's happening in their life, as well as the hardships of the era. In Afong Moy's case, she had to deal with a lot of hardship back at home in China regarding marriage, a marriage that did but didn't actually happen, coming over to the States in a way that was basically trickery, and then arriving and having to face a lot of curiosity, racism, poverty, and it didn't help, or perhaps it helped in some way regarding the curiosity and how she was able to make a way for herself, but it didn't help her personally, like literally being able to move around, that she had bound feet. So as a child, her feet were bound. They could be very, very small and petite, but of course that would be hard to get around in China, but taken out of that context, it would be very difficult to literally move around in the United States. When she's dealing with circumstances in which she is practically trapped with someone and is unable to get out of her situation. In the story, we follow her female descendants. The story takes place over 200 years where we follow Afong, her descendants, up until the year 2045 where we meet Dorothy and her young daughter, Annabelle. We see the women through the generations deal with many hardships that come from external sources such as war, climate change, the economy, etc., while also grappling with family trauma that haunts them in a very literal way. I have to say, author Jamie Ford had me at the author's note. The author's note is in the beginning of the book, and he talks about what inspired him to write the novel, one of them being epigenetics. Epigenetics is the study of how our genes are affected not by the genetic code, but external forces such as the environment, situations, so again, we're talking about family trauma. And Jamie Ford uses a couple of really cool examples, one of which is an experiment involving mice. I don't like the experiments on animals, but to let you know what the study is about, scientists would release a citrus fragrance into the air just before electrifying a floor. I don't know if it was a cage or a box, but it's the mice's habitat. And obviously the mice who experienced this would know very quickly when they smelled the scent, there would be a lot of pain because the floor would be electrified. The curious thing was, even their descendants, mice who never experienced this for themselves, would have a fearful response whenever they smelled the citrus fragrance in the air. That's one example. Another example, I'll have to read it to you actually. This example dealt with twins. And I know you've probably seen, various things on television or read about twins that have a lot of similarities. I think we've seen that, but this was just so uncanny. Take the uncanny case of, he says uncanny as well, take the uncanny case of the Jim twins. In 1940, they were separated at birth and put up for adoption, each finding new homes 3 weeks later. It would be nearly 4 decades before the brothers crossed paths and discovered some startling similarities. Both had a dog named Toy. Both enjoyed woodworking. Both married women named Linda, divorced, and then both married women named Betty. Both had sons named James Allen and James Allen with 2 L's. Both were plagued with migraines. Both worked in law enforcement. Both vacationed on the same Florida beach. The list goes on. I've definitely heard of twins who had the same occupation, who tended to like the same thing, had the same hobbies, because they are twins, so there's some things. But naming their dog Toy, both marrying women named Linda first, and then marrying women named Betty second, and naming their children the same names except one gave his son Alan 2 L's. That is strange. The more you look into the world, the more you see that there's so much trauma. Pretty much every group of people has, if you want to go all the way back, I would say that the human race in general carries so much trauma from all corners of the world, right? There are things that we know about, but there's things that we can't even imagine thousands of years ago. I think I encountered recently something on National Geographic, and I showed my mother, it was, I think, a skull that was it 300 years old? 300,000, or was it 30,000 years? It might have been 30,000 years. A skull from 30,000 years ago where someone had thrown, they found the bones, the remains in a cave. And the person had been thrown there, but they were hit twice on the head and it caved their skull in. This is 30,000 years ago that people have been killing one another, causing so much harm. And you can just imagine the amount of the trauma that we share as a collective, how that gets filtered, how that gets removed. And this novel explores so much of that, like what one particular family does in dealing with trauma that happens to a family in a period of 200 years, beginning with Afong Moy. I mean, what if we just went back and back and back? Not to mention if we were following the paternal lines and the various maternal lines. It really makes you wonder what's going on in here. We're going to have to talk about that with Mr. Jamie Ford when we speak to him at the end of the month. Definitely pick the book up. It's fantastic. It's super intriguing, very engaging. Yes, there are some hard things that are happening in the book, but the book doesn't just focus on the trauma. There is a way that Jamie Ford writes the book in which we're really just living through these women and seeing what was happening in the world at that time. You know, World War II. Was it World War II? Yes, World War II, and of course, like later in the future, the climate change that's happening and what's happening with the economy in 2045. We have a boarding school experience, and we have blossoming love, and all of these things that we experience that doesn't make the book so heavy and emotionally dense in a way that you feel it'll be difficult to get through. And you know I will tell you ahead of time. So pick up The Daughters of Afong Moy by Jamie Ford. Make sure you join us for the chat at the end of the month. Don't forget to follow along on Instagram at AMERIE'S Book Club. Also my personal Instagram at Amory, and follow the hashtags Read with Amory as well as Amory's Book Club. Until then, I will see you soon. What I don't know, like I'm like cheer, like what is that, raw? In any case, definitely look into epigenetics. It is a super intriguing phenomenon. I don't know if it's, I don't know if I would even call it a phenomenon, because I wonder if this is just how we're built. If it's happening to us and it happens to mice, this is something that's within us. I think this is just the way we work. Nature works, life works. We could go on and on and on. I shall not do that. I will see you later. Bye.